Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello. Welcome, friends. Welcome, listeners. This is Life List, a birding podcast. I am George Armistead, and today I am chatting with a good bud and colleague, Adam Walleyn. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing good, George. Down here at my house in San Diego, getting some beautiful spring weather here. The lizards are starting to come out. Birds are singing up a storm, so life is good.
Wow. And we are catching you right in a little gap between trips. For folks that don't know or haven't met Adam, he is pretty much a lifelong bird guide at this point, birding guide, been doing birding tours all over the world, but is also very keen on his mammals and his herps, and has been done like a lot of Southern Ocean trips, but really a lot of trips everywhere, a lot of independent travel too, apart from the tours, even to places that some might consider inadvisable at times. As a result, has a lot of experience and tremendous number of stories. Adam, I don't know if you remember where I met you.
I remember, George, but I was in a bit of a haze, so you probably remember the details better than me.
We were supposed to be roommates on a subantarctic cruise to New Zealand, the same trip Al and I have coming up here. You and I were supposed to be roommates. I think by that point you'd done that trip a number of times before, and somehow I ended up in a car, and we were going to visit you because you were laid up in the hospital there, and I can't remember, it was Invercargill or Dunedin in New Zealand, and you were not feeling well. You had malaria, and you were like hooked up to an IV and like barely cognizant of what was going on.
Yeah, it was Invercargill. I think we were supposed to be sailing. It was either that night or the next day. And Shirley Reth finally said enough's enough, and she pulled me off the ship, drove me to the hospital. And I got diagnosed with falciparum malaria, cerebral malaria. So I don't know what would have happened to me if I got on that boat, but it wouldn't have been good.
No.
So it was the second ever case of malaria in Invercargill Hospital, and that's where we met. I was a bit groggy, lying on the hospital bed, hanging on to life there. But that was the start of our friendship.
That's right. And that was, back 2007 or something like that?
Yeah, it would have been around those years.
Yeah, that was certainly memorable for me, probably less memorable for you. But I was like, oh man, this guy is supposed to be my roommate. You know, I knew that I was looking forward to meeting you and talking with you because my birding, some of my earliest birding memories were from the area where you grew up in southern Manitoba there. And why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background, where you grew up birding, how you got into being a tour leader and guiding trips?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a small town in southern Manitoba and got into birding and wildlife watching at a very young age. And it just kind of materialized pretty organically. I ended up, when I was about 21, I bought a one-way ticket to South America, and along the way I ended up getting a last-minute ticket on a trip to Antarctica, and that kind of led into a job. Dennis Mentz gave me a job working on expedition boats. He basically called me up a few months later and said, if you can get to Greenland and drive a Zodiac, we'll give you a job. So that's what I did. And the rest was kind of history. So I spent my 20s into my early 30s working on expedition boats, primarily for heritage expeditions and a few other companies as well. And then into my early 30s, my wife and I decided we better settle down a little bit, or as much as I could settle down, and
as much as you're capable of. Yeah.
And so I started leading land-based tours for rock jumpers. So I still work primarily for rock jumper here. 10 years on, I've been working for them, but I do a few other trips here and there. But yeah, as you said earlier, I've basically been a birding guide here for my whole adult life. So that's been my career.
Now, how many Antarctic cruises have you done, do you think?
Yeah, I've lost track of the Antarctic cruises, but it would probably be getting up into the 40 or 50 range. So I've been to pretty much all parts of Antarctica and almost all of the sub-Antarctic islands, most of them many times. Done at least as much in the Arctic, if not probably done more in the Arctic actually, and then many of the remote islands in between them as I could get to.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's a lot of time in some very, very remote areas. And I know you've done the sub-Antarctic Islands cruise that we've got coming up, which I've told folks is certainly one of my favorite trips I've ever done. I've done it twice and am really excited to get back and do that again. What do you think for that trip, the sub-Antarctic Islands, New Zealand and Australia? What do you think kind of the salient, exciting parts of that trip that like you having done it, I don't know how many times you did it, but that you looked forward to seeing again, or that you think might surprise people, while they were on that trip?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of call it the best pelagic birding trip in the world. I reckon there's three like really, really good sort of multi-week pelagic trips. You got the Atlantic Odyssey, the Pacific Odyssey, and then the birding down under. But yeah, to me, I always tell people it's the best pelagic in the world. It's an interesting pace because you go to 7 different island groups, and each island is kind of different with its own sort of endemic birds, but also just its own feel to it. And each island is actually really quite different. And then in between, you usually get a day of seabirding, and the seabirding almost kind of builds through the trip.
Yeah.
So for me, the highlight of the trip was always the chance to get up towards the Chatham Islands and the seabirding approaching the Chathams and leaving the Chatham. And that's the most diverse tube nose area. I mean, I've managed to sail, most places that have seabirds more or less, and that to me that's the best seabirding in the world. Getting up to the Chatham Rise there, I think one day we had something like 35 species of tube nose, and 10 of them were albatross. And, like this is just crazy stuff. And so you have the volume of birds is just insane, the variety of birds, and then you get the rarities out there too, like the magenta petrel and the Chatham Island petrel, which we certainly don't get those every trip, but their numbers have increased significantly since we started doing that trip. I think the year you did it, we had one of the first ever at sea sightings of the magenta petrel, and now, I mean, they're common enough that you don't expect them, but we get them on probably more than half of the trips out there now. So that's been really exciting to see. But that's the part that I get the most amped up for is the seabirding coming up to the Chathams.
Yeah, I remember that first trip I did there. Got up early, was out on deck ready, hoping for magenta petrel and just whatever else the ocean was going to deal us out there, and the Chatham Rise was going to deal us. And I just remember that, I think before breakfast, I counted something like 450 white-faced storm petrels, like just white-faced storm petrels. It was just one after another, and
yeah, it's insane. So I actually spent a summer working on Southeast Island or Rangitir Island, which is one of the offshore islands in the Chathams, and I think the estimate, whatever, was like 1 million white-faced storm petrel breeding on this tiny little island. And like, if you would ever walk outside with a flashlight, the white-faced storm petrel would just be like fluttering into your face, and they're so light that it doesn't even feel like they'd just be crashing into you. And I remember one time one just sat on my shoulder, I was like a pirate walking around with a white-faced storm petrel on my shoulder. But the other amazing thing there on Southeast, and I've never seen this actually described, but the skuas would actually sit on the beach, like with their mouths basically open, just waiting for a storm petrel to fly into them. And
It's like a
there were just
reptile.
so many storm petrels there that it would just happen to just fly into
Like eventually that one was just going to fly right into their open gape.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
No,
that's
the diversity and the volume of sea. But it's the whole trip. It's not just a chat. I mean, the whole trip and the species composition is changing every day. So yeah, every day it's just actually quite different. Which you would, I mean, the trip's fairly long, right? It's like 18 days or whatever, but every day just brings a quite new experience and a new feel.
Yeah, I'm excited also to see, how some of these birds have recovered after, since they've done the rabbit and rat eradications. Sounds like birds are much more plentiful now on Macquarie Island. And I think some of like the Campbell Island teal and the snipe doing better on Campbell Island. So.
Right. Yeah. Since you've been there, George, they've done Macquarie Island. They've done the Antipodes. Campbell Island would have just been done probably when you went there. So yeah, they're just going from strength to strength. They've got most of those islands eradicated, and the regeneration of the vegetation was the first thing we noticed, and then the regeneration of the land birds. The seabirds are going to take generations to probably have a noticeable change, but that will come as well in time.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Yeah, you mentioned all parts of you mentioned Heritage Expeditions, who we're working with on this cruise course, and also I'm sure you would have done that Ross Ice Shelf trip as well. And Kate Sutherland, our friend Kate Sutherland, has just returned from her second trip there. I think we've got an interview planned with her to discuss her adventures all the way down there to the Ross Ice Shelf. Man, what a crazy trip that must be. I'd love to do that someday.
Yeah, the Rossi trip is just like Antarctica on steroids. It's the everything's just bigger there. The scenery's bigger. The emperor penguins are all down there. It's just a big epic trip. So yeah, it's one that probably not a lot of people get the opportunity to do in a lifetime, but it's definitely one of the the most amazing trips.
Yeah, that should be wild. Now, you are soon off on a rock jumper tour to the Lesser Antilles, I believe, in a few days here, right?
Yeah, that's right, George. I'm heading to the Lesser Antilles on Monday, and just got back home the other day from a trip in Panama.
Yes, which is what I really am excited to hear about. Now, there's a lot of birding trips that people do in Panama. The Canal Zone and the Canopy Family lodges are all wonderful, and there's also fabulous birding in Western Panama. But not many people really do the kind of trip that you just did. Maybe give folks kind of the broad overview of what you just did and like how you got stuck in there. How did you begin?
Yeah. So went with some friends into the Darien. So this was my fourth time going to the Darien, but this trip we went with Isaac Pizarro, who lives down there, amazing local guide, and he took us into Cerro Pire, which is pretty deep inside of the Darien National Park. Probably the biggest sort of preserved rainforest left in Central America. I know there's a big one in Belize, Guatemala as well, in the Yucatan there, but I think this one's probably bigger. So yeah, into the Darien National Park. And yeah, so an interesting history down there of birding and bird exploration. There was a well-known fly-in camp in Cana.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been there, George.
No, I wanted to do that trip very, very much, but then of course it became impossible to do.
Yeah, so that camp basically more or less got taken over by a group of dissidents, and it's right on the Colombian border. and got shut down, and it's now overgrown. I actually talked to somebody who walked in there in 2019, and they said basically all of the buildings are completely overgrown, and it took them 4 days to walk in there.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway, so there's all these high elevation endemics in the mountains of the Darien, which basically became off limits. Interestingly enough, in 2005, when they were still operating Canada there, and I heard rumors there was this trail up to Cerro Pire, and I actually flew down to the town of El Real, which is sort of the starting point, and I made it to the ranger station at Rancho Frio, which is basically where the road ends. So I was actually there in 2005, and I was trying to find a way that I could climb up to the top of Pire, but the trail was all overgrown there. So I made it. I'd only made it about halfway up the mountain, so I never made it to the elevation where the endemics were. So it had always been a dream of mine to get back there, and finally made it happen here thanks to Isaac Pizarro.
Folks may not know, right? The Darien Gap is like the only break in like sort of civilization, if you will, and the Pan American Highway, right, is right up. It's like this big chunk of forest that is a wilderness, and Cerro Pire the highest peak within the wilderness there?
No, I think it's Cerro Tacacuna is actually the highest one.
Okay,
yeah. But it's one. There's 4 or 5 high peaks and ridges. So yeah, basically the Pan American Highway ends in Yavisa. You get on a boat there, and you drive to El Real by boat, and then that little airport that I landed in 2005, that's all shut down now. It's all cobbled airfield, and you can't really land a plane there. But you can easily get there by boat, and then there is actually like a road that you then take a 4-wheel drive vehicle to the edge of the Darien National Park. You walk into this Rancho Frio in the lowland forest, and then you start hiking up, and
then how many days were you on foot once you left Rancho Frio?
Yeah, we spent 8 days in the national park. So yeah, it was I think seven nights. A couple of guys brought tents. I just brought a hammock and just chilling in the hammock at night in the forest. It was pretty awesome. So we spent most of our time up on the ridge where these sort of rarely seen endemic birds are. But I think at the end of the day, I was actually more impressed by some of the birds in the lowland rainforest and some of the hill forests getting up there to the ridge. It was just such a vast area of primary forest, and all these widespread but scarce species. We saw so many amazing birds.
And what elevation were you at there at Cerro Pire when you were up?
Yeah, Cerro Pire, the highest, and we went a little bit further along the ridge than most people go. We went to about 1,300 meters. So most people there's a camp right at the start of the ridge, and that's where most people camp. But we decided to keep exploring while we were up there, and walked a bit further on to some higher elevation.
How many birders do you think make it there annually?
So quite a few, I think, do actually go to like Rancho Frio, but it's probably maybe I would say there have probably been about 20 birding groups have ever gone up to the ridge, or especially the further reaches there where we walked to a peak called Cerro Lamina, and there probably only 4 or 5 groups have kind of gotten along that far from what I gathered.
That's what I was thinking. That's even actually fewer than I would have guessed. I figured it was a pretty select group. This kind of reminds me of like the Helmet Crest hike in the Santa Martas that some folks do, the week-long trip. Obviously not a species diverse and quite a bit higher in elevation, but sort of similar in that basically you set out on foot and you're out in wilderness hiking for pretty much a week. But this you're really at the really good latitudes for high species diversity on this hike.
Yeah, you cover 3 real different habitats, like the flat lowland rainforest with the huge trees, and then the the hill forest, and then once you get on the ridge, suddenly it's like cloud forest. It's totally different, stunted, mossy, and the birds are completely different up there. So yeah, I mean, the hiking and I don't want to downplay it, but I've heard horror stories of how difficult the hike was. I mean, we didn't really find the hiking to be that challenging. It was just kind of a steep trail in the forest and then a ridge. So yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people have. As far as I know, a lot of birders haven't been up there, but it's not like crazy walking. But we just wanted to sort of spend a lot of time up on the ridge while we were up there.
Yeah, you guys didn't want to be rushed. You wanted to be able to soak it up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So so that was quite special.
Yeah, and what were some of the highlights? Like whenever you and I talk, we like at some point we get to whether there were any snakes and there were any cats, and I do want to hear about those two things. But let's start with the birds. What were some of your major targets that you were really hoping to see? How did you do with those, and what were any birding surprises?
Sure. Well, the highlights up on the ridge were those endemic birds like the varied solitaire, green-naped tanager, all of those kind of birds. So the one we didn't see, and one of the reasons we wanted to spend a lot of time on the ridge was to look for the Pire warbler, which is quite a peculiar one because it used to be easily seen at Kana, and when birders started going to Cerro Pire, it was apparently easy to see as well. But in the last few years, it's vanished from the ridge. There's only been one documented sighting in the last 7 years, as far as I know. And apparently it used to be common to see there. So nobody knows what's going on. And, we were hoping if we went a little bit further and got a little bit higher, we might have a chance to see it. The one sighting, with a photograph that's happened in the last few years was at Cerro Lamina, which is one of the reasons we wanted to go that far along. But we spent a lot of time up there and didn't see it. So that's an interesting mystery up there. What's happened to the Pire warbler?
Yes, and folks, for a little perspective, there are 11 photographs of that bird in eBird, 6 audio recordings, and it looks like basically 2 blocks on the map, teeny tiny range, just right there at Cerro Pire.
Yeah, and also the song is undescribed. If you click on all those vocalizations, they're all call notes, and it's just strange. The black-cheeked warbler, it's a sister species to that, and that's just not a hard bird to see, and you hear it singing, and it just comes around. But the Pire warbler, there's something up with that bird.
Strange.
So yeah, that was that was some of the highlights on the ridge. But as I say, my bird highlights were really lower down. Some of these slightly more widespread, but birds that you just rarely see because they need these vast pristine areas of habitat like flat-crowned antpitta, sapayoa, wing-banded antbird, all these amazing things. But I think probably for me, the real sort of special thing about the trip was some of the birds of prey that we saw. And I had to go and count afterwards because I was thinking, man, we saw a lot of birds of prey, and it ended up 41 species
Good Lord.
Birds of prey. I mean, that includes owls and vultures and falcons and all birds of prey, but we saw 41 species in our time in the Darien. And a lot of the rare or scarce forest interior species that you just normally don't see. But for me, the highlight raptor was crested eagles. So Isaac took us to a nest. It wasn't like an active nest; they were just starting to build it, and it was a male, and the female was a black morph, which is quite rare and quite special.
I saw the photos of that bird, and I was like, oh man, not only did they get crested eagle, but they got a dark one. It was like, it looked beautiful.
It looks kind of like a cross between a harpy eagle and a blackhawk eagle. Like, it's just an incredible bird. So what happened, when we were sitting there and the male flew onto the nest, and then suddenly the female started calling. It was right over our head, and it was holding a big snake, a musarana, and it was like right over our head. And then so we were watching this, like totally excited. And then the male actually swooped right in and landed right beside the female, so they were both like right there. And then after a couple minutes, they flew off together to the nest, and then they actually copulated on the nest. So, I mean, it was pretty epic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, for folks that may or may not be familiar, like you were saying, that crested eagles, sort of like a smaller version of a harpy eagle. They can actually be pretty tough to tell if you don't get a good view or a prolonged view of them. And they're actually even harder to see, crested eagles. Like typically, thinner on the ground. It seems like harder to find spots where you can actually see them, see a pair, and to see a dark one, and to see them copulating. You got to be someplace pretty special.
Yeah, so I think that probably goes down as the highlight of the trip for me.
I guess so.
At least for the birds.
Yeah. And you mentioned wing-banded antbird. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but my first trip to Panama, I actually had one of those on the Pipeline Road, wing-banded antbird.
Wow.
Yeah. This would have been back 2000 maybe. It's like right around 2000. And I was there with my girlfriend at the time, and we were just kind of chit-chatting along the road, and she's like, "What's this thing?" And I look over, and it's a wing-banded antbird, like 30 feet away on the ground, just tossing leaves, looking for, and I was like, "Oh my God."
That's totally crazy.
Yeah. And I don't think there've been many sightings since then.
No, it's weird there because like the forest has stayed the same there. I mean, it's still amazing forest, but some birds have definitely disappeared from there, and that's one of them. And it sounds like the ant swarms have largely disappeared there. I mean, you probably remember back in the day, you'd go to the Pipeline Road and you expected to see an ant swarm, and for whatever reason, like you might see one, you might not. It's changed there. The forest on the face of it hasn't changed, but something's different.
Something else has, yeah. Now, you also mentioned a musarana, which I think is a snake with a really broad range, right? I think they get all the way down into Argentina and stuff.
Yeah,
maybe
super widespread snake. And I don't think I've actually ever seen a musarana alive, but I've seen them in the claws of big raptors a few times. So it must be an important prey item for raptors.
The only one I've seen was at the same site where we had Pampas meadowlark in.
Oh wow!
Yeah, in
Nice.
Argentina.
Nice.
We found one right along on the road, or just beside the road. It was alive and moving. So I got some poor images of it. Now, how about? Did you see any other snakes while you were there?
Yeah, and I mean the snakes were some of the best. I think the best snakes I've ever had in the neotropics was in Guyana, but this was probably almost as good, if not equal. So I think we had about 10 species of snakes. We had a coral snake. We had two beautiful fer-de-lance. But then I also had probably one of my all-time most exciting wildlife encounters, which was with a choco bushmaster.
No way.
So this was on the steep part up from Rancho Plastico. Yeah. So this was on the steep part up from Rancho Plastico to the ridge, and there was a yellow-green grosbeak calling overhead. It was just up the trail, and so I was like walking in the lead, like looking up, but I'm always paying attention to the trail. Always, these snakes can always be there. So one of my eyes is looking up in the canopy for a grosbeak. The other's kind of looking down at the trail. And suddenly I see this massive bushmaster just coiled up in the middle of the trail.
Oh my God.
Like one step away from where I was. But I mean, I stopped in plenty of time.
Yeah.
So we got everyone together and like we had to move the snake because we couldn't get around it. So we had to do something, and none of us, even Isaac didn't know. He'd never seen one on a trail before. He'd seen them, and he later told me this was the scariest moment in his 25 years of living and guiding in the Darien. So nobody knew what to do. So I'm like, well, you know what? I've moved plenty of snakes off trails. I'm just going to hit it with a stick. So I hit it with a stick, and it came at us.
Oh my God.
like slowly. It wasn't like,
I was going to say, it's hard to picture those things moving really fast, but
yeah.
for folks that don't know, this is a snake that can be like, they get up to like 10 feet, right? It's like basically a giant, it's the largest pit viper in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't like striking, but I thought this thing like was just gonna like
go
tap
right
it on the
trail.
head, and it would just go off like every other snake that I've tapped in the head. And it didn't do that. It came towards us. And one of the guys in our group, Eric, he actually had the camera rolling while this was happening, and then you can just hear him shout, and then you can hear all hell break loose.
Wow, I would love to see that video. I would love to see that.
I'll definitely send you the video. But so it sort of came. I mean, I think it was just confused. I don't think it was actually like trying to attack us, or it was just confused about where to go. But then it just sat there on the trail, and it took us like another 20 minutes to actually move this thing off the trail. So yeah, that was the highlight of the whole trip. Never mind the crested eagle. This Choco Bushmaster was the big moment.
Yeah, Lachesis muta, right?
I'm not sure which the Choco
species.
One is. Muta? Yeah, I'm not even sure.
Yeah. That's like, I mean, as I've talked about before, I've got like a real snake phobia, but I've also got like such a fascination, and I like feel it's in my bones that I need to see one of these Bushmasters. And there's a spot in Colombia I know that they're seeing them fairly regular, that I'm inclined to visit next time I go. And wherever they are, they tend to be good birding, right? Like if the forest can support a Choco Bushmaster, then there's bound to be some good birds. But as you say, you want to keep one eye on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, these things happen. Like it's not. I'm never scared going in the forest, thinking there's going to be a snake there. But you always have to pay attention, because these things they sit and wait, and they just sit for something to walk into them, basically. So
usually they're looking for small rodents, and
they're not expecting. They don't want a human to step into them, but
they're hoping for maybe an agouti or smaller, probably smaller, really. But,
So that was the Choco Bushmaster.
Jeez, man! Wow, that is wild. And I'm gonna guess the over/under on cat sightings was less than 1.
Yeah, you'd be correct in that. Actually, when I went in there in 2005, I saw my first ever puma on the trail there. But this year around, no cat. There were lots of big paw marks on the trail. Isaac said they were mainly jaguars, actually. So there's I think 6 species of cats in that forest, so they're all there.
Wow.
But we didn't see them.
Man. Now, how many pumas have you seen in your lifetime?
I've seen 5 pumas, and I think 4 of them have been on foot. So,
jeez. So that's more than I realized. I remember you telling me about your most recent puma sighting, which was just a year ago or less, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I know you know this story, but that was another one of my more thrilling wildlife encounters. And this was on a trail in Guyana. So I was leading a tour there, and we were done for the day. But I was just poking my nose inside the forest just to have a quick look around after everyone had gone to bed. And so I came around the corner, and I see these 2 glowing eyes, and then I see this puma. Like, it was a long straightaway, so the puma was pretty far away still. And I was super excited, like, oh yeah, I'm getting this awesome look at a puma. I got to be really quiet and like don't want it to know I'm here. So I had a few seconds of that when suddenly it's like, oh, this puma's getting really close to me. I probably better let it know I'm here, and then it'll run away. So I shouted at it, which I've had to do before with a puma like that. And the other times I've done it, they look up and like run. This one looked up at me, stopped for like a second, and then just kept walking right at me. And it was not like looking like it was going to attack me, but it also didn't really care I was there. So I started to get
too curious, perhaps.
Yeah, I started to get a little bit concerned at this point. and I grabbed a big stick, and then
So at this point, it's like what? Like how far away from you?
Yeah, by now it's it's in jumping distance from me. By the time I had the stick in the hand, so I mean, like these cats and bears and stuff, like you see them, they're just walking. It doesn't seem like they're moving fast, but they have a big
Cover
stride
ground.
and they just cover ground so fast. So yeah, by now I've got the stick and I'm like, well, this is it. I'm about to fight a puma, and so I just swung my stick at it and shouted, and I didn't hit the puma. And it did move off the trail, but it kind of looked annoyed, and it just went and sat in a bush, and I could just see its two glowing eyes in the flashlight staring at me from the bush. So I mean, I don't think it ever had any malicious intent, like it was going to pounce on me. But
you think it was just legit curious, like what's this critter that's out here?
Yeah,
you think he was just like it was just curious
I had to
about
take some action there, but yeah, it was just the progression of the sighting, just from I gotta be super quiet here to I better make some noise to I'm going to be fighting a puma. It all happened pretty quickly there.
Man, wow, well, that's wild. Well, we're excited that you're going to be pursuing some other cats in the not too distant future on a Hillstar trip. Yeah, why don't you tell folks what you've got coming up there?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited for this. We all love all the big cats, and so this is going to be our first Hillstar trip to Mongolia in search of the snow leopard. So snow leopard is probably the mythical big cat, the one that until quite recently nobody ever really saw, but slowly
now they're starting to get them.
Slowly and surely, there's some tracking programs, and they're figuring out the habits of snow leopards, and it's now becoming, possible to go and hope to see a snow leopard. They've got a site in India that I know we've both been. There's a spot in Tibet that some people are going, and recently here the spot in the Altai Mountains in Mongolia where we're going next August offers you a pretty good chance at seeing the gray ghost, the snow leopard.
Yes, the Shan, as they call it in India, right? In Ladakh. Yeah, and I think what's cool about this trip too, compared to some other spots, is that you can do it. It's not freezing cold. It's not super high elevation like some spots, and there's a lot of other stuff to see. Now, I think it's worth. You and I have talked about before. It's worth folks knowing that often, the chances of seeing snow leopard are quite high. Obviously, with snow leopard, nothing's guaranteed, but the chances of seeing them are pretty good. But often they're not super close. They can be, usually good scope views. It seems like satisfying scope views can be obtained, and then with some real luck, you might get them close enough for good photographs. That takes a lot of luck. But in addition to snow leopard, like on this trip, you guys have chances for Pallas's cat, which I like to think of as the original grumpy cat. Those of you familiar with the grumpy cat memes, this is I think the original, the OG grumpy cat. And then we're talking about Saiga antelope and Przewalski's horse. So a bunch of really cool mammals, but a bunch of birds too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Pallas's cat is a huge part of the trip as well. I mean, I think about a third of the trip is spent with the Pallas's cat, and really probably fewer people have seen a Pallas's cat than have seen a snow leopard now. So that's a huge part of the trip. Just to go back to your point on the situation in Mongolia. So I think you and I have both done the camping up in northeast India. I know I was there in the middle of February with my wife, and we were camping at, I think, whatever it was, 14,000 feet and minus 30 Celsius. So
we
enjoyed seeing the snow leopard, but it was a chilly experience. So in Mongolia here, we're going to be sleeping in yurts, and we're going to be there in the late summer. So it's actually hopefully going to be fairly pleasant weather. And we're not going to be at 14,000 feet. We'll be at about 8,000 feet. So a much more, let's say, comfortable way to try and find the snow leopard. And so in terms of birds, it's fairly low diversity, but some exciting birds out on the steppes and in the mountains. White-naped crane, maybe Altai snowcock up in the mountains, sandgrouse, the Tibetan sandgrouse, Mongolian ground jay. That's in the same area where the saiga antelope are. We're not expecting a huge species list, but some really interesting sort of Central Asian birds to keep us entertained while we're scanning for the cats. And it's fall migration as well, so that's part of the allure of the trip, I think, as well. We never know what shorebirds may be around at the wetland. East Asian songbirds, warblers, or thrushes, or all sorts of interesting possibilities. So, I think should be a lot of fun. Apart from the big item mammals, there's other interesting mammals and some real quality
and vast
birds.
open landscapes as well.
And the landscapes, every day should be amazing.
The saiga, I think, is making quite a comeback from what I understand. I think they're doing pretty well. If people aren't familiar with saiga antelope, Saiga is how it's spelled. It's worth a Google. To me, it looks like something that, it's like a George Lucas, Star Wars, like something, like they always have some little critters in the background of whether it's in the Dagobah system or and they got sort of those puffin-like creatures in the more recent Star Wars movies. The saiga to me looks like one of those things that they would have just, created, because it's got sort of it's almost like it's an antelope, but it's got kind of like a proboscis. It's got this totally weird face, almost like recalls an elephant or a tapir. And I know they were in real bad shape from a, conservation population perspective, but it sounds like they're on the increase and on the uptick now. So it sounds like
I can't remember all the details, George, but basically until fairly recently, they were in herds of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. They were one of the most common large mammals on Earth, and then the majority of them just dropped dead in a very short period from some disease, which I think has stabilized now. But the numbers, they just kind of disappeared. I think the area we're going in Mongolia is a fairly small herd. It's not going to be in these vast herds that you've heard of, but it's a small, stable herd. So we expect to see them, and like you say, what a crazy looking animal with that
really wild,
crazy nose.
Yeah, really, really bizarre critters. Yeah, well, that is a good one. The folks should definitely check that out. There are a few spots left, and it's going to be an epic trip. Hopefully, not the last time we run that, but it'll be a special trip. And so you've got the Lesser Antilles coming up, Adam. What are you? Give folks a rundown on what you're going for there on this rock jumper trip.
Lesser Antilles, we're island hopping, so I can't remember the number now. Something like 27 endemic birds, from 29 endemic birds. We're visiting 10 islands in 6 different countries, so it's all these places like St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Barbados. It's kind of an island hopping adventure, and every day is a new group of endemic birds to look for.
It's a good time of year for migration and vagrants, I would think, out there as well.
Yeah, it probably is, and they get a few weird European things out there, more so than we seem to get in the U.S. for some reason.
Barbados, I think, is particularly a good spot, right? And I'm trying to remember what the other island is that is really good for vagrancy.
Whatever way the wind's blowing or whatever it is seems to be one of
those prevailing winds. Yeah, from Northwest Africa, kind of scraping across the Atlantic there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. really looking forward. Really looking forward to this trip. Always fun birding in the Caribbean, and getting to these small islands will be real special.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else you want folks to know about before we scoot here?
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. It's been great chatting, George. I've been a fan of the podcast since you started it up. Always fun to have a listen, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing it. I knew basically from day one when we started this, at some point I was going to want to get you on. That we'll probably have you back as well, because the stories are legion from all your many travels, and I'm always eager whenever we catch up to hear about your latest close encounter. It seems like you're good at finding those situations, Adam.
Yeah, I think the key is just to go deep inside the forest. That's where the fun stuff happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's one for folks to keep in mind. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again soon with another episode of Lifeless to Birding Podcast. Take care, everybody. Take care, Adam.
Thanks, George.